Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In today's episode, we're going to be reading some Bigfoot emails. It's been pretty windy out here, but overall the weather has been pretty nice, and I think it's getting ready to get real cold. The white-tailed deer have been moving like crazy, and when I went out there hunting, I've seen some little bucks and some does, and when I went hiking around the property, I seen some deer as well. They don't seem to be too scared, too spooked yet, and I think they're enjoying the fall harvest and breeding season. So yeah, it's a good time to be a deer, except for deer season. It's right around the corner. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my interview that I did on myself. It was really hard to tell my own stories, and it was like the third or fourth time that I attempted to create that video, and I still wasn't satisfied, but I said, okay, you know what? This is the story. It doesn't matter that the video is not perfect. I'm just gonna get it out there, get it off my chest. And yeah, if I would have been behind the camera, I think it would have turned out a lot better. Adam from the Half-Inch Wrench crew, he tried helping me out, and somehow I lost that footage, so I had to do it for a third time. But I appreciate you, Adam, for helping me out. I wish I could have found that footage, but yeah, the reason I told my encounters was in hopes that it would help somebody out in the future, just because I know if I experience these things, someone else out there did, and I know if it's difficult to talk about, it is for someone else as well, if not more so, just because the position I'm in, I don't care anymore. I don't care what people think about me, and it's helped me out a lot in life, not caring what others think, and I've grown a lot from it. All right, this first Bigfoot email is from Teresa P. Hi Miguel, I really enjoy your channel, and I decided to share my encounter with you. It's been a really rough year for me and my family. On May 23rd, my 88-year-old father passed away a day before my son's 42nd birthday. He took it extremely hard because he lost his dad when he was very young to suicide. I believe he was 12. Anyway, my son has suffered with depression and anxiety all of his life and self-medicated all these years because he said the meds did not work for him. Anyway, he took his life on July 3rd, so it has been a horrible summer for me and my daughter and the rest of my family. Thankfully, I have a wonderful husband who has been there for me 100% and taking care of me. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little heads up about what I've been dealing with. I'm in my 60s now, but when I was young, I used to camp a lot. I came from a large family, and that was the only type of vacation we could afford. I had my daughter first, and then 3 years later, my son, and we took them camping also as a vacation because we both loved it. I hadn't been camping since I was in my 30s, and to surprise me for my 64th birthday, my son and daughter-in-law bought me a tent to come camp with them up at Lateral Ridge State Park here in Pennsylvania. It is part of the Chestnut Ridge mountain area that I'm sure you've heard about. There are many accounts of Bigfoot in the Chestnut Ridge area. I live in a very small town, and there are Bigfoot reports online from this area, but I do not want to disclose my current town. I live in the ridge, well, actually below the ridge, but we drive up through there a lot just as a way of getting out and enjoying nature, as I cannot hike anymore due to terrible back problems. I'm sorry to hear about that, Teresa. There are structures and breaks and all kinds of sign that Bigfoot is in the area all the time. Anyway, I decided to camp with my son and daughter-in-law just for a couple of days, but ended up that I stayed for a full 6 nights. Their campsite was the only one that was way down off of the road and out of sight. The path down to the campsite is very steep and rocky, so I had to be very careful getting down in there. But once you got down in there, it was nice and level, and there were woods all around our campsite. There was a huge tree behind where they had my tent set up, and when I got down there, back to the left of the tent, probably about at least a couple 100 feet, there was an area of the woods there that was very dark looking, and there were way more down trees than there were standing. And it just looked really eerie and dark in there. So I stayed out of that area. But right behind that big tree, behind my tent, there were all kind of saplings growing, and many of them were snapped off, just like you hear about in the Bigfoot stories. The first day I was there, I was sitting by the canopy, and my son and his fiance at the time were busy doing other things, and a pine cone fell at my feet, and then about 20 minutes later, another one. I have no idea if it had anything to do with Bigfoot or not. I just found it interesting. My son and his fiance had camped in the same exact spot 2 months earlier in June. My daughter-in-law told me that one night when they were sound asleep about 3 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden an owl started hooting on one side of the tent, and then another would hoot on the other side of the tent, and they went back and forth for at least 15 minutes, and she said it was loud. She couldn't believe it. My son was getting very upset because it was keeping them awake, but it finally stopped and he fell back asleep. She couldn't get back to sleep, and she was laying there and she heard something walk up through the campsite close to their tent, and she said it sounded like it had asthma the way it was breathing, and it sounded very heavy. She thought it was possibly a bear, but no one ever reports bears in the campsite area down there. Down beyond our campsite was just woods, and there was one road that ran through the entire park area, and it was just woods across the street from that too. She honestly thought it was a bear, and neither of them believe in Bigfoot. While I was there, I took a walk down the path past their tent, which was about 50 feet away from mine, and I'd say I saw what looked like a structure down in the pathway, and I wanted to explore and see what it looked like, but I was afraid to go by myself. I watch a lot of videos, and I've watched many Can-Am missing videos too, so I'm afraid to go anywhere in the woods alone. On my third night there, it was sometime around 3:30 in the morning. I was sound asleep, and I was awakened by a very loud crack, like a tree breaking or a branch breaking off a tree back in the area that was very dark. It scared the crap out of me. I laid there for about 45 minutes, terrified. About 10 minutes later, there was another smack against a tree up from our campsite. Then again, about 10 minutes later, another one down from my son's tent. I wanted to call out to my son, but I was even afraid to do that. I was wondering why in the heck they had not heard it or yelled out to me or anything. The next day when I got up around 9 a.m., I asked them if they heard the sounds, and both of them said no. To this day, I do not understand how they didn't hear it, because it was loud enough to wake the entire campground, in my opinion. 2 days later, a guy came in on a motorcycle and took a tiny little campsite across the road from ours. He couldn't see us, and we couldn't see him because, like I said, our campsite was way down in there. It was during the week and there were no other campers around. He set up a hammock tent, if you've ever seen them. The next day, he came over to the top of the path and yelled down to us and asked us if we had seen or heard any bears since we had gotten there, and we said no. He said about 3:30 in the morning, something touched his toes through the tent hammock and scared the crap out of him. That really got me going, because I thought possibly it was a Bigfoot. The rest of the time I was there, nothing else happened, but I did feel like we were being watched a lot while I was sitting around the campfire. I was afraid to come out of the tent to relieve myself at night, so I would go in a big jug cut off at the top. After my experience, I made my son set up a light up over my tent, so if there were any Sasquatch around, they would avoid my tent. Well, that is my account, and I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. Take care, Miguel, and I'll be watching you on YouTube. As always, Teresa P. from Pennsylvania. All right, Teresa, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with me, and I'm very sorry to hear about your husband and your son, and it means a lot that you reached out to me, and I apologize it took so long for me to finally get to your story. But yeah, that is creepy, just because I use a hammock whenever I camp, and I think about that. What if something comes up and like snatches me up and carries me off into the woods or anything? What if like a bobcat jumps on top of me? on top of me while I'm sleeping. I don't know, I think about weird stuff like that. But yeah, you kind of confirmed to me that wildlife or Sasquatch will come up to people while they're sleeping in their hammock, which is pretty creepy. Yeah, I've had that same experience on the Merrimack River. I was camping in an area where I've had previous experiences. I got screamed at, had a tree pushed over, and it was just me out there. I did a loud whoop, some knocks right before it got dark, just like the time before, in hopes that I'd draw in the Sasquatch. And to my amazement, they came in. There was a loud knock behind me, a loud knock across the river, and it just sounded like they were knocking back and forth. One knock across the river was so loud, it sounded like someone shot a shotgun off, because you could hear the crack from the tree, and it was pretty loud. It was freaky, but I didn't get scared. I was more focused on what I was doing. I was hoping that my audio recorder would pick up something, but it was low to the ground. It didn't pick up much other than bugs, water, frogs, and when you're in a river bottom, sound does not carry very well. I think you'd have to get up to the top to hear from side to side across the river, but I did my best. But they came in and it was super cool. But yeah, I believe you. Just from reading your Bigfoot email, it sounds like you had a similar experience, and yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that, Teresa. And we'll move on to the next Bigfoot email. All right, this next Bigfoot email was sent in by Jaden, so let's get right into it. Miguel, my name is Jaden D, and my fiance and I recently discovered your YouTube channel. We love it, by the way. I was wondering if you ever heard stories about Bigfoot near Indian Trail State Park. It's just a few miles north of Salem up Highway 19. A few years ago, in 2019 or 2018, I think, I was bow hunting on our family's property in the park, and I was sitting in the stand in our food plot. I and my dad have hunted this stand many times, and it has been in the exact same spot and same tree as far as I can remember. I'm 22, so I'd say at least 15 years. It was just a normal hunt, and I walked in and climbed the tree, sat up there just like usual. I hadn't seen anything except maybe a few squirrels. All of a sudden, I hear something absolutely sprinting out of the holler next to the food plots I was hunting over. It was pretty close to gun season, so the rut was coming in. I assumed it to be a huge buck, so I grabbed my bow and got ready, but when it became visible, it was definitely not a deer. It was hard to see, and I cannot say with 100% certainty that it was a Sasquatch. But it was something very unusual. It was running down on all fours, and the movement seemed familiar to that of an ape, monkey, running like you would see in the movies, like Discovery Channel. As quick as it came, it was gone, running parallel to the road I had walked in on. It was red, like a sorrel horse or a red cow, and about the same bulkiness of a cow as well, but it didn't run like a cow, and it had no markings to make me believe it was a cow. It did run across a side road, but there were no prints. It was breathing heavy and loud. At the time, I just wrote it off to be a cow, though. If I told anyone the story, I just referred to it as this thing because it wasn't explainable. I was telling my fiance about it, and he said, "Do you think it was Bigfoot?" And then it was as if the fog had cleared. That's exactly what I would say the creature was. He went on to explain that the Ozarks are known to be Sasquatch territory. I had absolutely no idea about that or anything about Sasquatch really until your channel and everything my fiance knew. Him and his dad are Sasquatch theorists. Just wanted to share my experience and see if you had heard any stories from around the same area. Again, we love your channel, especially the Killing Fields episodes. All right, thank you very much, Jaden, for sharing your encounter with me. And I'm somewhat familiar with that area. That's more down south from me, and it's about an hour away from me, an hour away from the Killing Fields. So it's pretty deep in the Mark Twain National Forest. And no, I haven't explored that state park yet. I'd like to get in there and check it out someday. It looks like it'd be a pretty good area for deer hunting, and I'm sure there's a lot of bear and hogs in there, mountain lions, things like that. But yeah, just from your description, that sounds like a Sasquatch to me. The fact that it was paralleling you and it was running on all fours, the color, the sounds that it made, and how swift it was. I don't think it was a cow or a deer or anything like that, but yeah, you definitely came across something there, and I'd like to go in there and check it out someday for sure. But I think there's been a lot of reports from that area. I had a friend near here that told me they seen a Sasquatch by Salem, Missouri on the Missouri Bigfoot researchers page on Facebook. I think there was a report not too long ago where someone was traveling from Salem, Missouri at nighttime, and they said they don't know exactly where they were. They were somewhere between Boss and Salem, Missouri, and they saw a bipedal creature, and they reported it on the Missouri Bigfoot researchers page on Facebook. But yeah, they're out there, and there's a lot of woods out there. There's a lot of paranormal activity out there, and a lot of UFO activity. I know some people that research the UFO phenomenon like to go out to that area. I think the highway's called Highway 63 that goes through Rolla, and a lot of people say that they see strange lights, experience unusual phenomenon in that area, and I believe it. There's a lot of stuff from there. All right, thank you very much, Jaden, for sharing your encounter with me, and I really appreciate you and your family for watching Sasquatch Theory. That really means a lot to me. So it's cool knowing that people from Missouri, North America, and all around the world are tuning in to Sasquatch Theory to listen to people's encounters, and that shows how important these encounters are and how many people are really listening. So if you guys feel alone or feel like somebody's gonna call you crazy for sharing your experiences, that's not the case. People are pretty open-minded around the world, and they really want to hear these stories. So yeah, there may be people around you that are going to ridicule you, but you'd be surprised how many people are open to this phenomenon. But yeah, let's get into this next Bigfoot email. This one was sent in by Nathan. Hi Miguel, you wanted me to let you know if I have had any more activity. I seen something huge running away from me and my black lab yesterday hiking. This is the area I frequently hike and camp where all of my encounters have taken place. We hiked a total of 5 miles. On the way in, I was snapping pics with my GoPro and my phone. Also placed an apple in a forked tree limb. I got some pics of an X and a few bows. The top of one bow was gouged in the ground to hold it down. The other was held down by a log, which I have seen done a couple of times. On the way out, we were pretty exhausted. We had about a mile to get back to the truck, so I was done and wasn't ready with my cameras. I heard what sounded like a hawk screech, like you hear when they soar, but it was low in the woods. I thought that was odd. I whistled back, just playing around. The dog started trotting and pointed towards a small treetop on the ground with dried brown leaves about 100 feet ahead on the logging road. I heard those leaves rustle just enough to think it was a small animal in there. I called the dog's name, focusing on making the dog. He stopped turning to look at me, and he starts to whimper. When I glanced back at the brush, I seen mid to back legs running away and didn't hear a sound as it ran. It disappeared in a second towards the top of a hill. I would compare it to the back of an ape. It was a light ash color. It was crouched, climbing for the fraction of a second that I seen it. Once again, I couldn't believe what I had seen. Bears are black and wouldn't have scurried to run. I don't believe anyways. When we got to the brush, there was no way this thing was hiding in there. I can't explain it. Like I said, it was just enough brush for something small. We went around to an easier route to the top of the hill, which was clear on top for about 50 yards and nothing, of course. The apple was untouched when we passed on the way out. Thanks again for being an open ear for all of us. Nate. All right, Nate, thank you very much for sharing your encounter. And that sounded very similar to the previous story that I just read. And yeah, it seems like a lot of people are seeing some type of creature moving through the woods that they can't identify. I actually interviewed a guy from North Carolina who had an encounter at a place called Medoc Mountain, and that's pretty similar to what he saw. He said it was huge and it moved so fast and it couldn't have been any other animal. And apparently, I think it was like a couple weeks or maybe a month after I interviewed that gentleman, somebody had a sighting at Medoc Mountain in North Carolina, which really blew my mind. And it really added credibility to the man's story. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I found out also after interviewing that gentleman that there was a Medoc Mountain Bigfoot research organization. I'm not sure if that's what it's called, but yeah, there's a Bigfoot group from Medoc Mountain who has been doing research there the whole time. And the guy that I interviewed in that group, I think, connected, which was pretty cool to hear. I'm glad that he was able to find like-minded people. It does worry me connecting my guests with unknown people just because I don't know who these people are. So I'm glad you guys were able to connect, and I apologize if I wasn't able to do that properly for you guys. It just kind of freaks me out who I send your guys' way, just because I don't know a lot of people. And yeah, there are people that contact me who watch the videos that want somebody's phone number because they heard their story, and unfortunately I can't give that out to you guys, because when I tell people's encounters and stories, like their accounts, that they trust me to keep their information private and not just hand it out to anyone, because it could be the wrong person saying, yeah, I've had the same experience, but really it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So I'd hate to do that to you guys. And yeah, I'm glad everything worked out. And like I said, a lot of people are seeing strange things out there in the woods, so keep your eyes peeled. Definitely keep your head on a swivel. Be armed if you're out there. And yeah, I appreciate you, Nate, for sharing your Bigfoot encounter. And like I said earlier, that's why I told my story. That way, when I start reading all these accounts that are sent in to me, you guys are going to hear the similarities, and we're going to be able to compare things and hopefully figure things out a little bit more. But what do you guys think? Do you think the Sasquatch activity is a physical phenomenon, they're flesh and blood, or do you guys think that there's something spiritual going on, like portals, gateways, doorways, whatever you want to call it, and these creatures are coming in and out of our reality physically, but in a spiritual way? We don't understand the quantum world and black holes, so there's a lot that we don't know, so we can't just write this off when there's so much out there in the universe that we don't understand. Okay, so we can't say everything's cut and dry because we haven't figured out what Sasquatch is. And I don't care what kind of researcher you are or what kind of encounter you had, no one really knows what's going on. And when it comes down to it, and at the end of the day, that's how it is, guys. But yeah, there's people that claim all kinds of things, that they know a lot about the Sasquatch, which could be true, but I don't think anyone knows any more than the next guy. So, all right, this next Bigfoot email was submitted by Troy, and he is a fellow Missourian. Hi, my name is Troy B. I grew up here in Chaffed, Missouri, Chaffed, Missouri, and Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Some years ago, I went to the Trail Tiers outside of Cape Girardeau, Missouri, where the overlook area is. I had walked down an old pathway where I used to go with my dad and overlook the Mississippi River before the overlook area that is there now. I saw police had an area off the old trail taped off as if a body had been there. I thought it was strange, but paid no mind. I thought it was strange, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I went in to look over the river. When I came out of the woods onto the pavement area, a fist-sized rock was thrown at me right by the right side of my head, right behind me. Whatever threw that rock could have killed me if it wanted to hit me with that rock. I thought for a moment someone was in the woods and had a bad sense of humor. This was all before everyone started talking more about Bigfoot and Dogman. way before Sasquatch Chronicles. So some years later, I told a girlfriend about it. So we went cruising around the Trail of Tears. I was about to show her where this happened. We both heard a very loud whistle that sounded just like a human's whistle with their fingers, but much louder. This is an area of the woods where a Cherokee princess, Otaki, is buried. Michelle heard it and was a bit shocked. She thought it was a wild person in the woods. Then there was another time, I think around 2008, I was visiting my brother Brandon. We decided to go for a beer way back when we used to drink beer. We came out of his vehicle, then here for the first time ever, something was howling and barking like an injured wolf, but it was way too loud to be any type of dog. It sounded like a very loud PA system in the woods behind his house across the field on the other side of the ditch by his house. Whoa, I just talked about that same experience on my channel whenever I told my stories. I had the window open, I had the TV on, and it was around 9 o'clock at night. I think it was in the summertime, and I heard a werewolf. It sounded just like a werewolf, just like you would hear in the Hollywood movies. And then I heard a scream, which terrified me. But see, guys, that's why I told my story. So when you guys hear these things, you're gonna know that I was telling the truth. But yeah, they're out there, and that's terrifying. Okay, let's get back into the story. My brother is hard-headed. He doesn't believe in such things, yet we both stood in his driveway shocked over how loud whatever this thing was in the woods. There's been times I've asked my brother what he thought that was. He always agreed with me that it was extremely unusual. We stood in his driveway listening to the howling fit for about 10 minutes, then gave up listening and left to get some beer. Whatever it was extremely loud. I can honestly say it was as nearly or as loud as train horns. Wow, Troy, that is freaky. And the similarities with my experiences is startling, especially that it's in Missouri. I've always wanted to explore the Trail of Tears. Whenever I drive down to the killing fields, I pass by some signs that say the Trail of Tears, and it's really remote. So if you go out there, definitely bring someone with you, because you could easily get lost out there, or something happened to you, no one would ever find you. Because when I drive through there, I hardly pass any cars, and it's mainly just government employees, as far as like loggers and miners. I mean, I don't know if that's a government employee, but they do work for the government. And there's not really that many people out there. There's a few farmhouses, but yeah, it's remote. And I believe your experiences, and I'm glad you were able to experience that with your brother, because it's difficult to deal with when you experience such a thing by yourself, because you can't talk to anybody about it. There's no one to compare notes with, and you're kind of on your own. But yeah, I'm sure your brother's a lot more open-minded now, and I certainly would be if I heard something like that. And yeah, I don't blame you for only listening for like 10 minutes and then leaving. I've done the same thing before, where you hear these strange things and it carries on forever, and eventually you gotta move on, go do something else. But yeah, be careful out there, and let me know if you have any more experiences. I like to keep in contact with people just to see if like the phenomenon follows them. And I'm not wanting to hear every time someone has a wood knock, but if you have like another sighting, or maybe you encounter like an alien or something, yeah, I definitely want to hear about that, because I'm trying to understand this phenomenon a little bit better. But yeah, it does seem like Sasquatch is physically living out there in the woods. You can find evidence of them a lot more than any other cryptid, ghost, or angel. Like Sasquatch, you can actually find physical evidence of, which that's the mind-bending part, is no one can really figure out what they are, where they come from, where's the bodies at, where's the clear video footage, but yet they're out there. And that's the hard part to wrap our minds around. Even if you don't believe in the Sasquatch topic, you can't deny that you have seen evidence. I know a lot of people say, I haven't seen one bit of evidence. Then you haven't looked at any of the tracks, you haven't heard any of the studies that have been done with the DNA hair samples. I mean, I wasn't there for that, but I mean, people have found evidence of Sasquatch. There's a ton of videos out there on the internet, whether you believe it or not, they're out there. So yeah, keep an open mind. Just because there is evidence, you just got to search around the internet. You got to look at a ton of different materials, such as books, movies, documentaries, and I think you'll find something startling if you look into the subject, especially a correlation where the phenomenon happens and where certain people live at. So yeah, I think a lot of people are most shocked that they find out that Sasquatch is actually in their neck of the woods and in their backyards. All right, sorry guys if it's taking me too long to get through these emails, and I'll try to make the videos a little bit shorter, but for those of you who are watching this, I really appreciate you for tuning in and sticking it out. All right, this next email was submitted by Darren, and he's from Texas. My name is Darren K. I live near Hillsboro, Texas, located in the central part of Texas. Let me start with, I'm glad you're doing this about Bigfoot and getting the stories and experiences out there. I really enjoy listening to David share what he has on his property, and tell him, don't ever give any of the haters a second thought. They are not worth the time. Yeah, I agree. I had to learn that myself. My brother-in-law was calling coyotes one night in East Texas, close to his house, and it was a good location that no one has ever had access to. So we figured we might have some luck. We would call from the back of his truck. We would normally use the top of his cab as a rest or sides of the bed. I placed my electronic collar on top of the cab, and after we got settled, I played a group of coyotes howling to see if we could get coyotes to answer. After the first segment ended, I usually wait for a minute or two before I play it again, and when I played the same noise and segment, something answered that neither one of us expected to hear. There was a sound of what I refer to a wolf howling, then the sound turned into a roaring noise with a huffing, snarling sound on the end, and it was one long breath. It was probably about 200 to 300 yards from us. We immediately looked at each other in confusion, asking, what the hell was that? And did you feel the power of it vibrate through your body? And I whispered to him, it sounded like something off a werewolf movie. He kind of laughed, agreeing with me, and we sat there listening and discussing the sound. We couldn't figure out what it was and how big it could be. After a few minutes, I hit play on the collar, and as the coyote sound ended on the call, whatever it was let out another howl in a different spot, a lot closer to us, maybe about 75 yards into the trees from us. We both went to shining our lights, searching for what made the noise, never seeing anything at all. We stayed there still, searching and talking about it, and how unreal it was, and how powerful the noise felt hitting us in the chest. So I played the coyote sounds again and never heard it howl again. So we got our stuff in the truck and rode around shining the lights, thinking we might see whatever it was. We talk about it all the time to each other, and that's the only experience either one of us has ever had. This was 3 years ago. I was 49 at the time, and I've been all over hunting, hiking, all over the US since I was 16 with my dad. And I've been to Mexico, never heard anything like that, nor since then. My brother-in-law and I had been exploring all over, always looking for cool stuff, but now when I go in the woods, I have a little different outlook. If I'm asked to describe the noise, I really can't. The only way I can is if it was crossed between a huge wolf and an African lion. Yeah, that's a pretty good description. And I'm actually standing in front of the spot where I got howled at years ago, and that's pretty freaky. But yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that experience. And there's a lot of Bigfoot reports from East Texas, and I was surprised to hear this, what I would call a Dogman experience. Have you guys ever heard of any Dogman reports from East Texas? There probably has been, just because the areas where people see Sasquatch are the same areas where people report Dogman, UFOs, and strange phenomenon. But yeah, that's pretty cool that you guys were able to experience that. And again, you had someone there with you to experience the activity, so they can confirm that you're not crazy. Yeah, it's a sick feeling experiencing this stuff by yourself and not being able to talk to anyone about it. But yeah, they're out there, guys. Be careful, because if you look into Sasquatch and you do Sasquatch research out in the woods, you go camp and you spend a lot of time out there, be careful, because you might run into something that's not Sasquatch. So keep that in mind, guys. I know a lot of Bigfoot researchers don't believe that, but that is the case. And they even talk about it on Monster Quest. The Monster Quest people were pretty open to it. And think about how many cryptids have been discovered that were claimed to just be myth. So Dogman is real. I think so anyways. I've never seen one, but I'm open-minded to it. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. That's all the emails, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get through all these emails. But just know that a lot of the phone call interviews that I do on the channel originate from those emails. So I am reading the emails, and when somebody gives me their number and they're willing to tell their story on the channel, that takes priority over me reading these emails out here, just due to the fact that hearing somebody's voice and a person tell their own encounter is much more significant than me standing out here in the woods reading somebody else's experience. But yeah, we're getting through all the emails, and it's gonna get cold soon, so I hope you guys are ready for winter time. And if you guys are living in a warm area, I envy you. But no, I love living out here, guys. It's amazing. And yeah, we'll tune back in with more Sasquatch emails here in the future. So I appreciate everyone for watching. Take care and be safe.